everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of English Notes with Miss David. I am Miss David, and I will be your host. Let's go ahead and get started. So today we are going to be talking about plot, and we're going to be going over some vocabulary words. The reason why I want you to watch this now instead of in class is that I feel like there's a lot of notes to take down here, and it could take a lot of time. So I thought I would walk you through it on this video so that you can watch this on your own, and then when you're in class I can help you with the checkpoint for this, which will be outlining your narrative. So at this point, hopefully everybody has a good idea of what they're going to write about for their narrative, and you've taken some time to get started on writing it. But today we're going to talk about how to create a plot within our narratives. So in order to do that, there are some things we need to know. So here we go. You can also use these notes as notes to take your PFA. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over is setting. Now, you may have learned that a setting is where and when a story takes place, but it's a little bit more complicated than that if you want to really get down into it. Additionally, the setting can also include the culture of a story and how the world within that story works needs to be established with a setting. So if you think about the settings on your phone, it's sort of similar. You set the settings on your phone so that your phone can function exactly how you want it to. That's kind of how setting works in literature as well. The author has to change little things, not just where and when the story takes place, but also to establish a culture within that story. We can talk about more examples of that in class, but I want you to ask yourself, and maybe jot down in your notes, why is it important to have a fully developed setting in a story? So we don't just say, I was at my grandma's house. Okay, we need a little bit more than that. What's it like at your grandma's house? What does it smell like there? What does it look like there? What kind of sounds do you hear? What is the culture at your grandma's house? So on and so forth. So that's a little bit about setting. Go ahead and pause this video at this time to take down some notes, and then press play when you're ready to keep going. Okay. Next, we're going to be talking about plot itself. What are the tenets of plot? Now, I know this is a lot, but bear with me. You've probably seen this line before. This line is called a plot diagram. And every story that you can think of, every good story anyway, has these elements within their story. So the best way to go about writing your narrative, guys, and if you want to use this as your outline, you so can. So we have an exposition, an inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion. I will go through what each of these are. You can write down what each of those are. And then if you want to use this as your outline, and say exposition, I'm going to say that it takes place at grandma's house. I'm going to introduce the characters, which is my grandma and my brother and me, so on and so forth. So that is the exposition, is where and when the characters, where and when the story takes place, and you're introducing the characters. Then we have this thing called the inciting incident. The inciting incident is the moment in a story when conflict is introduced to the character. So if the exposition is just introducing everyday life, at my grandma's house, it's just a typical day at my grandma's house, blah, blah, blah. I was playing with my brother. We were watching cartoons. That's saying what you do on a normal day. But the inciting incident is what makes the story a story and not boring. So it's the moment when conflict begins for the protagonist or the main character. It is vitally important to have an inciting incident. So if you're using this as your outline, you're going to write, what is that inciting incident? And then there was a knock at the door, right? That's the inciting incident, when somebody comes to the door to share some news or whatnot. Rising action is a series of events that build tension in a story, advancing the storyline. So first there was a knock at the door, and then we got a letter saying that, my brother who was away in the war had gotten killed. And then I decided to go to Iraq and try to save him. And then I and then I right? So it's just different points in a story that are building tension, leading to The climax, which is the tipping point of a story. It's when the outcome of the story is determined. So if we're going with the story that I'm just making up on the top of my head, let's say your brother was captured in Iraq and you want to go save him, the tipping point might be the moment you find him and then you have to break him out of the Iraqi prison. I don't know. So that is the moment in the story where the outcome is determined. It's oftentimes the most exciting point in the story, but not always. Then we have the falling action, a series of events that show everything falling into place. So, and then I got back on my helicopter and went back to my grandma's house, blah, blah, blah. And then conclusion, the end of a story where all or most of the reader's questions are answered. Notice I said or most, because that doesn't have to answer every question. Sometimes the best stories leave questions unanswered. But yeah, if you don't like the way that Summit has your narrative outline set up, feel free to use this as an outline as well. So instead of having the definitions here, then you would put your exposition, your inciting incident, and so on and so forth. Linear versus nonlinear plots. They're going to ask you about this on your PFA. Wink, wink. So a linear plot is when the story is told in chronological order. Like first I did this, then I did this, then I did this. It is a straight line, hence the term linear. Line is in there. It's a straight line from beginning to end. Meanwhile, nonlinear is a plot that bounces around. So we go from the beginning kind of to the end, and then we kind of go back to the middle, and then we go around and up kind of towards the beginning again, and blah, blah, blah. So it's told in a bunch of different snapshots. A bunch of different snapshots of the story, and then it's up to the reader to put those snapshots together. So that is a linear and nonlinear plot. A parallel plot is when more than one story occurs simultaneously. So let's say I'm telling a story of my day. That's going to be different than what your day is like, but maybe our stories are intertwined a little bit. So my day throughout the school day and your day throughout the school day, they're happening at the same time, and they both encompass what happens at AIM on a regular school day, but they're two different storylines, right? Even though they happen at the same time, your day is a little different than mine. So that is what a parallel plot is. Also, I hope you've been pausing in between each slide. I realize I'm going sort of quick. Feel free to go back and pause in between each slide so that you can get these notes down. Okay, flashback and flash forward. Flashback is when the plot of a story is interrupted to give background information outside of the exposition. So the exposition establishes any background information that's necessary, but let's say we're in the middle of the rising action and we need to know something else. The author might stop the plot where it is, give us a flashback, and then keep going. Afterwards, the story resumes in its original time. That's the difference. Meanwhile, a flash forward, same thing, it's flashed into the future instead of to the past. Go ahead and pause this video so that you can take down the definitions of flashback and flash forward. Okay, the last thing I wanted to go over was pacing. So pacing is the rate at which the story progresses. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. If there's a lot of description in a story, it's usually considered slow pacing. Picture it's like a camera moving in slow motion to get every little detail of the setting or every little detail about a person. It's like one of those teeny bopper movies when a girl's in the cafeteria and she sees the boy of her crush the first time in slow motion. It's his smile was like the sun. His eyes glimmered like stars. That's slow motion because it's describing every little detail about the boy in the cafeteria, right? Then if sentences are short and a lot of action or dialogue is described, it's usually fast pacing. So that would be something like, I turned the corner with my car and zoomed right past the cop and blah, blah, blah. It's going really quick because we don't have time to slow down and describe what the cop car looked like in the story, right? We gotta go. The story's gotta go quicker. So that is the pacing of the story. One more thing I wanted to show you guys is this. This is, oopsie. This, my friends, is a little information. Was found in Summit about showing, not telling. So this kind of goes with pacing in that sometimes we're slowing down, sometimes we're speeding up. I want you to use your words to show me what's happening instead of just saying, the boy in the cafeteria was cute. You would say, his smile was like the sun, his eyes were like the stars, blah, 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 whatever. So flatline means like the story's dead. It's not going anywhere. It's boring, right? So flatline would say, she told him to go away. He was mad. Alive and Kicking says, get the hell out of here, you weasel-like man, Eunice began. You are disgusting and despicable. Oh yeah, well I never even liked you. So like this is going quicker because it has fast pacing with dialogue and it makes it a little more exciting. That being said, that's all I'm going to talk to us about today on showing and not telling. That'll come in another lesson as well. I just wanted to introduce you to it. So, that being said, at this time, go ahead and give checkpoint 5 a shot. I will show us how to get to it in class. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for being here on this episode of Notes with Miss David. Until next time.